Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. I am your host, Madison Malloy, and on today's episode, we are talking about addiction. Whether you're struggling with an addiction or somebody you know is struggling with an addiction. My guest is a motivator, speaker, coach, author, has a great book called My Addiction, My Superpower, and how he used his addiction and getting over his addiction to drugs and alcohol to transform his life and be of service to others. He talks about the benefit of getting sober for not only addicts, but for all of us, adapting a healthy lifestyle and how he's found that, the most successful people on the planet work out 5 to 6 days a week. So there's a lot of good motivational tips in here. So this is definitely a must listen episode. And we will be right back after this brief message with our guest.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. I just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
All right, welcome back. We are with our amazing guest today. He is an author, he is a speaker, a coach, and most importantly, a motivator. With us today is Mitch Motivates. How are you?
Hey, Madison, grateful. Thank you for having me on.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that you're here. So you have such an interesting background and an interesting story. So you're a recovering addict, but you realized you were an addict at a very young age. Share with us that experience.
Let's get right into it, Madison. Again, thank you for having me on. When I was 15, it was just a couple guys in a basement in North Jersey, normal. And one of them was like, my dad's gone and he has some beer in the fridge in the basement. And we drank it, but the difference is that for me, it was like a warm apple pie with ice cream on a summer day kind of feeling inside. It was like, oh my God, what is this? It's just drinking my first beer on my own. And I chased that feeling. And then I just can't explain it, except that I just don't have a normal relationship with alcohol. And right away, I started drinking only to get drunk. I would go to parties in high school and I would leave to drink on my own.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What made sense to me was drinking to get drunk, not being a social drinker at a party in high school.
Yeah.
What that led me to was, smoking pot every day, then smoking pot multiple times a day, changing my lifestyle, new groups of friends, missing class, missing family stuff. Friends that I had my whole life, I started hanging out with people who were doing drugs. And it was easier at the time to get drugs than alcohol because I always say this, drug dealers don't card. You don't have to be 21 to buy weed or
Right.
coke or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm abusing marijuana in high school. And then one of the girls I used to smoke a lot of weed with asked me if I've ever tried cocaine. And at that point, I would have tried anything. And I just did it and I loved it. And I did coke like I did the weed, like I did the alcohol, as much as I could. I, didn't matter if it was a Monday or a Saturday. Didn't matter if I was in school or not. Didn't
Oh my
matter if I
God.
was at a wedding or not. Yeah, it just like right away, it became like a tornado, and I just chased that high. Um, it was crazy, and
So do
mhm.
you think that because I've heard this, you have a gene that causes you to be
Yeah,
addicted?
yeah. They say right nature versus nurture. We
Okay.
try to figure it out if you have a gene or if it was how you were raised. I've actually don't really spend time thinking about that. I'm very much a person that practiced acceptance. A couple years into my addiction, I was in rehab, and I accepted pretty quickly, being a 19-year-old in rehab, that something was going on. And it's funny, we only ask ourselves that kind of question with addiction or mental illness, no one would ever. I mean, my mom is a breast cancer survivor. No one is once went up to my mom and said, "Do you think you were born with the breast cancer gene, or do you think you just got it? Did you have a bad diet?" No one questions any other thing except addiction.
Yeah.
Actually an interesting thing. It just came to me.
Yeah.
Um, no one questions my dad has an allergy to chocolate. No one's, no one's asked my dad if he was born. No, I look at my addiction like that. It just unfortunately something I know I have, and I just dealt with it right away. The ultimate accountability.
Yeah. Because you'd probably be dead.
I mean, we say that jails, institutions, and death are the three paths for an addict.
Yeah. So how long did it take for your parents to discover that you had
Yeah.
this problem?
So there were some, I mean, and I'd love to share about that. There were some red flags. I remember I was drunk at a school thing, and someone in high school sent a letter to my parents, like letting them anonymously telling them what I was doing. One time they caught me drunk. I remember I was drunk. I was driving, and it was raining. And I came home after curfew. They weren't happy about that. I was high to pretty much any family function, so they must have known. But the real bottom happened my freshman year of college. I ran away from home when I was visiting I grew up in New Jersey, but I went to school in Indiana, and I was visiting my family, and that I ended up running away from home, Madison. I just couldn't stop using drugs. So the fact that I was home to see my family didn't matter. I wanted to get high. So I ran away. A couple days later, my parents had filed a missing persons report. They found me. They took me to a hospital. That's the protocol when you find a missing person. And my family came to the hospital, and that's when I knew the jig was up. I said I had a problem. I couldn't stop, and I needed help. And a week later, I was in rehab, and that started my journey in recovery. That was 2006. It's
Oh my
2024
gosh.
now. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on staying
Thank you.
sober. So, do you still to this day have a craving or an urge to drink or do drugs?
I mean, sometimes, right? And I could equate it with, again, I talked about the other examples, but I think it's so true. My dad has a chocolate allergy. He doesn't
Yeah.
eat chocolate, but there's been times when he's looked at my ice cream and been like I could tell from his eyes,
Yeah.
like he wants that chocolate peanut
Yeah.
butter ice cream, right?
Yeah.
So yes, guilty as charged. Cravings, but you've learned to build your own lifestyle in recovery that I think rivals a drinking culture or any kind of social situation. And that's kind of how I developed the my addiction is my superpower kind of thing. I think it gives me a leg up in society that I'm sober today and that I
Yeah.
don't do any drugs or alcohol.
Oh, a
And
hundred percent.
yeah, I mean, I grew up as a teenager in sobriety. I was 19 when I first went into rehab.
Yeah.
The first 2 years I struggled. I'm not perfect. And then now I've been sober since I'm 21. I'm 37. So this has been my whole adult life.
Which is just absolutely amazing. But a lot of people
Yeah, thank you.
that don't even have an addiction or a problem with alcohol are giving up alcohol because they're realizing how much it's actually slowing them down.
Yes. I mean,
Your
the
mornings are
benefits, yeah,
slower, you miss the gym, you tend to not eat as healthy. And I mean, there was a comedian, Nikki Glazer, the comedian, she was on Rogan and she had talked about how when she gave up drinking and compared her career, it was night and day.
yeah. First of all, love both of those things. And Nikki on the Tom Brady roast was the funniest
Yeah,
comedian. I don't know if you
totally.
saw it.
Yeah, yeah.
She's
Oh my
awesome.
God. Yeah.
Um, and no, it's funny when I hear stuff like dry January or like sober October, you know, it's like almost like I'm having the last laugh. Like I'm like, guys, I knew this years ago that being sober had benefits for all. So welcome to the party. That's we welcome them to the sober party.
Yeah.
But the difference again, like I have an addiction. I'm in recovery. Um, I don't want to get morbid, but I know that for me, it's life and death to be sober, and that if I were to use again, it may lead to jails, institutions, or death. And like it's like a war for me. I take it very seriously, and I preach them. I mean, that's just my story because I know I've seen what happens, and it's scary, which is why I'm so passionate about doing what I'm doing, now, and I sharing my story. I'll
Yeah.
share my story anywhere, any place, anytime, because I know that that's how you help people with this.
So I know a person, obviously I'm not going to name names, who has a horrible problem with alcohol and goes to AA, is in the meetings, has a support group, has a family that's supportive, but cannot stop. Has even taken the pills. There's like a pill you can take that'll make you sick when you drink,
Yeah,
and
antabuse.
nothing works. Nothing works. And it's this constant struggle and this constant relapse. Like, how do you get through? How do you help somebody like that?
I mean, that's a very tough question, right? Um, there's no cookie cutter for recovery. That's the first thing I want to say. What worked for one person may not work for another. There's many different treatment centers. Most of them do a great work. There's
Yeah.
inpatient rehab where you have to go away. There's outpatient rehab where you may work during the day, then go to like a rehab at night, then go sleep in your house. There's coaching. There's life coaching. There's many different ways um, to do this. Number one, and so what I would suggest for anyone that's still struggling with this, that seems to have tried almost everything, is like just there could be something that they haven't tried. That's what I would suggest because there's no cookie cutter. You never know. That's
Well,
why we share our stories.
right. Because I was talking to somebody about this individual, and um they suggested like maybe like ayahuasca or like DMT, like the
Yeah,
spiritual. So yeah, I guess you just don't know, but it's
yeah,
so important to kind of have that support. So you wrote a book about this whole thing that was called My
yes.
Addiction, My Superpower. I want you to go into why it's your superpower.
Thank you for giving me the chance. Um, yeah, let me just tell the story of how I got to the book real quick.
Okay, of
Um,
course.
I've been sharing my story forever, and during the pandemic, through my boss, who Dr. Neinstein, that's how we got
Who's been
connected
on the
because you were
show? Uh-huh.
he's you know, and that's another amazing story of how we met. It's in the book. Um, I started reading a lot during the pandemic and listening to a lot of podcasts and realizing that what a great way to pass information. I think podcasting really blew up during the pandemic. A lot
Yeah.
of people were home. And I just knew that I wanted to share my story in another way that I had been doing. So aligned with if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So I started having an idea for maybe a book or a movie or a play, something about my life. And I met someone and she had written books. She thought I had a great idea. She introduced me to a publisher. A year or two later, this past January, the book came out. And it's called My Addiction, My Superpower From Mania to Motivates 12 Tips for Overcoming Addiction, Crushing Life, and Inspiring Others.
Yeah.
I mean, to get back to your question, Madison, my superpower is through positivity, vulnerability, and honesty, sharing my path in overcoming addiction and knowing that just doing that helps others to get over whatever they're going through and find their superpower. So
Yeah.
I'm basically my superpower is like being the kingmaker, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And so, and the book obviously was put out to help other people and to kind of get over this. So I think because addiction runs so deep, it's not just drugs, it's not just alcohol, it's gambling, it's
Yeah.
porn, it's sex, it's a lot of different things. Um, and so because you coach people as well, are you primarily coaching addicts on how to stay sober and how to kind of reprogram their mind?
I it's not only like that because the number one thing you learn when you try to work with people, especially one on one, is sometimes you have to meet them where they're at. Right? I was working with this one guy and he wanted to quit doing drugs, but he wanted to still drink.
Okay.
And I really gave him the space to do that. But, you know, if you're like me, if you're someone like me, I need complete abstinence from all mind and mood altering substances, including alcohol. We say
Right.
alcohol is a drug.
Yeah.
So, I kind of took a step back and be like, okay, we're going to drink. And then I remember his birthday was coming up. And he was like, I'm only going to have 5 drinks tonight. And I was like, okay, dude, if you really can control and enjoy your drinking, you should easily be able to have less than 5. And it turned out that he had like 9 and it led
Oh,
him back to doing drugs. So I gave him that space. And then because addiction is a self diagnosed disease. So when I work with people, they have to know deep down to their core that
right.
they are an alcoholic or drug addict, or else it doesn't work. Unfortunately, the story of your friend, he may not be at that level yet where he knows to his core that he has a problem with substance abuse. It may be obvious to everyone else, but there's no time window. Everyone is different. So it's unfortunate. In my path, I think it was because of how I grew up. I grew up in such a loving family. And I was so grateful to have the love and support of my family. I mean, that's really attributed to my success early on. Obviously, I realize that not everyone is blessed to have that support.
Yeah.
But again, the addiction and alcoholism just is a self-diagnosed disease. You have to believe it to your core in order to make the changes, the hard changes in your life to stay sober and get over this thing.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's the thing is like I have a friend who I think who has a problem, but hasn't, as you said, self-diagnosed it or like, admitted that it's a problem. And then the other friend knows they have a problem and they're doing everything to try and stop it, but they can't. And it's just like it's a sad thing because it's like it's so bad that you're like, when you hear they're alive, you're like, oh, thank God, because you're
Yeah,
just expecting the worst. And the thing is addiction, it doesn't discriminate. It really can happen. Doesn't matter your income, where you grew up, your family, loving family, not fit, it can hit you.
yes,
And so to have people like you is such a blessing. So thank you for what you do,
of course, of course.
for sure. So tell us about your coaching programs and your speaking, not just around addiction but other areas as well.
Well, like I said, that's why I love my book title, My Addiction is My Superpower. I really, there's something so positive and so uplifting that I've learned about sharing your story. I was doing a book signing in Florida, and this woman, doing a book signing is great. It was my first time really learning all the ropes about writing a book and going
Yeah.
on the road.
Yeah.
I went to Barnes and Noble. I'm in the middle of Barnes and Noble in Boynton Beach, Florida. I know no one. This random woman comes up. She looks nothing like me. It's like an older woman. And she picks up my book and she like reads the back cover and was like, my husband just died recently and I've been going through such a tragedy. It's it's good to hear a story, a positive story about someone that's doing
Yeah.
something good that turned their life around. And again, it's just so simple. I just back to basics. When I share my experience, strength, and hope, when I'm honest, when I'm positive, and when I give that vulnerability of like connecting one on one or just sharing details of my story, it really attracts any type of person who's going through something. And I try to take that as far as I can.
Yeah.
I don't discriminate who I work with. In July, I'm connected with someone who works for this homeless shelter in New York City, and I have 2 different engagements this July. I'm making no money. I don't care. I'm giving away my book. This is what makes me happy, and this is what I do. I'm going
Yeah.
to some place in Queens and some place in Manhattan, and having I've never been homeless, but I was like right there. I was like about to be homeless, because of my addiction, because that's where I spend all my money on drugs and alcohol. You know about, I mean, I don't know the stats, but probably most of the homeless population struggles with either mental health or addiction.
Yes.
And I know that my story is going to be powerful in those communities. So that's why I'm doing that in July. That's going to be fun.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, so that's kind of like, Madison, what I do is I share positive, vulnerable, and honesty, my experience, strength, and hope. And it helps people. I I I got the nickname Chief Motivator for my day job, which I love to share about. It's a great story how I'm
Yeah.
there and how I'm helping people. Um, one of my superpowers is I love to wake up early because I'm sober, and I
Yeah.
love to work out.
Yeah.
And in fact, the most successful people in the world work out 5, 6 times a week.
Hmm.
So that's a life tip for anyone. If you're looking to be one of the most successful people in the world, just work out 5, 6 times a week. Pretty much every CEO has that in common. Um,
Yeah.
I've been learning. I study mentors and leaders. I love this guy Scott Galloway. I've been listening to a lot of his podcast,
Yeah.
and
He's great.
yeah, he's been dropping that fact into a lot of what he talks about, which is just so obvious, but it's so hard to be consistent. So I would go Tuesday and Thursday to 6 a.m. Soul Cycle during when I lived on the Upper East Side in New York.
Yeah.
I live in Connecticut now, and there would be like 4 or 5 men in the locker room. The rest of the class, 4 or 5 men after class in the male locker room. The rest of the class was all women,
Yeah.
and everyone except me was a doctor. They were just like the most highly functional people on earth that wake up at 5 a.m., work out at 6 a.m., and are at the office, 7:30,
Yeah.
right? And I connected with all of them. Half of them are my friends today, and one of them is now my boss. Dr. Nightstein was there almost every Tuesday, Thursday in the morning, and we would take the Soul Cycle teachers class, and we just connected. And I was the only just non-doctor, but
Oh my
again,
gosh.
yeah, my superpower is my addiction, and I'm sober, and I was able, cheerio, like doing the class at 6 a.m. And we
Yeah.
connected, and yeah, and then one day after class, he's like, "Come to my office. I want you to try this new ab machine I got. Let's do some content." And then before you know it, I'm working for him part time. And I share that story because that's an example of how my addiction is my superpower, my current job. And I did had so
Yeah.
much success. We had so much success, and now it's my full-time job. I'm the COO of this amazing practice. It's just a dream, the life I'm living today.
I love that. And it's so inspiring. But you know what? There's unhealthy addictions and then there's healthy addictions. So now your healthy addiction is the gym, and motivating people, you know.
Yeah.
But I love that because I think that everyone wants to live a healthier, longer life, but so many people struggle to get to the gym. And sometimes it
Yes.
is a pain. You're just like, I won't have to get up as early. I can just, you know. But like this morning, I was feeling a little like that. And I'm like, just go. Because you always feel better and you always do. But the 5 to 6 times a week, it's amazing because I guess if you just go four, is is there a correlation between less money? It'd be
Listen,
interesting to
listen.
look at that.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And I'm absolutely not perfect, Madison. And especially with the running. Like I used to love running. I just ran my seventh marathon
Oh,
and
congrats.
thank you, in November. And I after the race, I just lacked all motivation to run. Even the motivator was guilty of it.
Yeah.
But what I know and what I tell people is you can do a 45-minute walk. That's the difference between not getting off your couch and training for a marathon. In the middle, that's not the in the middle between sitting on your couch and running and training for a marathon is a 45-minute walk.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, and
yeah, it's like changing that lifestyle, you know.
yeah,
But
yeah,
let's talk about, because a lot of people that may not have an issue, want to give up drinking. They're slowing down, they're done with the hangovers, the weight gain, all the things that come with it. What are the benefits of being sober just from a human perspective that you tell people, like, you know what, I don't have a problem with it, but I want to cut it.
got it. I would say the first thing is responsibility. I mean, in college, I was sober in college, and even though most of my friends were sober, I did get involved with a lot of people that weren't sober.
Yeah.
And I was just always the guy that they counted on to either drive people home, to be the protector when it's getting late at night and you're in a place that maybe you shouldn't be, and just being a responsible people count on you when you're sober.
Yeah.
And that is a gift and a blessing. I
Yeah.
mean,
I love that.
yeah, you said not to talk about the physical benefits to not drinking, or I mean, I'm pretty sure they proved wrong the study that a glass of red wine every day is good for your heart or something.
Well, I
What
think it
about
was the resveratrol that's good for you, but you would have to drink a gallon of wine to get the benefits of the
oh
resveratrol to reverse the age. So it's better just to take it in a pill form. So I think
yeah.
that's where it kind of originally started from. Or maybe the wine industry was like, ah, we need a marketing plan.
Yeah,
This is it.
yeah, right. No one wanted to say that if you want to do something good for your heart, maybe do cardio, but they
Yeah.
said drink the wine a day. So being responsible, being someone that's trustworthy. These are like I'm a very principled person as part of my recovery, and these are things that I hold myself very like high esteem that people count on me today, and that started with my early sobriety.
Yeah.
Um, Being able to show up early, to stay late. These are principles that we learn in recovery. Being of service. Whenever I go, these are things that I learned in my recovery. Whenever I go home for any type of holiday, my attitude is always like, how can I be of service at this function?
Yeah.
And whether it's throwing out the trash at the end of the meal, going for a dog walk with my cousins and their dog, helping set up chairs, helping move furniture, volunteering to bring something, instead of showing up and saying, I'm grateful it's Thanksgiving, I'm going to get as drunk as possible. The sober person says, what can I bring to this Thanksgiving dinner to make it better? How
Yeah.
can I help my aunt or my uncle or my parents tonight at our Thanksgiving dinner? I mean, so being sober has helped me have this attitude where I'm always going into situations thinking, how could I be of service? And that is like, has changed my life, Madison.
Well, it is. I mean, that's exactly what God wants us to do, is to be like Jesus and to serve others.
Yeah.
So you are living that. And I think people get so wrapped up in being self-absorbed and how is this going to benefit me and all this stuff, where
Yes.
it's like really you're going to get more out of life helping others. And in return, it's giving and taking, right? But you're going to receive more by giving more.
Yes. Because look, alcohol, if you don't have a problem, but you're maybe a casual drinker and you may want to give it up someday, you have to, we have to fill the hole with something, the void with something.
Yeah.
But sometimes, but again, sometimes it doesn't have to be that extreme. It can just be like, I'm going on a date tonight. Like, I'll have a drink, but it will probably be a little cheaper than the alcoholic drink, and it will be like some type of seltzer with cranberry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one thing, is the amount of money you're going to save. I mean, some people
Yeah.
I know spend so much money on alcohol, and it's like, what a waste. They could literally fund an orphanage in a third world country. And it's like, wouldn't that be a better use of versus these drinks? And especially you're in, you come to Manhattan, some of these places, it's like $30 a drink. I
Yeah.
mean, it's stupid. It's stupid. I have my own sobriety plan. If somebody doesn't buy the drink, I don't drink. It works because then I'm like, okay, I don't have to drink. So I don't really need to drink. I like can have fun
Yeah,
without it. I mean, being a
amazing.
comedian helped with that because you'd be constantly out at night and in atmospheres where everybody was drinking, but you didn't want to drink because you were a professional and
Yeah,
you needed to be sharp. So when you're used to being in an environment where everybody around you is drinking, but you're not, like it just becomes an easy thing to do.
yeah. Sobriety is a superpower. That's how I want to end this segment of the podcast. Is
Yeah,
again continuing to reinforce that sobriety is a superpower. And
absolutely.
if you're just starting out, it may seem like a lot, but we take it one day at a time, and we find our community, and we find people like me, like you, like that we can look up to that are paving the path to just leading a better life. And it's possible. I share in my book, it's never too early to get help. It's never too early to make a change. You don't have to wait till you get a DUI or crash the car. You can stop drinking now, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's amazing. Okay, so where can people buy your book and work with you and learn more about you?
I keep it very simple. MitchMotivates.com, social media, Mitch Motivates, one word, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And
Or
by the grace of God, you can buy my book on Amazon. I mean, that is the coolest thing ever.
yeah.
I'm so blessed. Search Mitch Motivates, search My Addiction, My Superpower on Amazon. I also happen to be a shareholder, so it's a double win for me. So please
There you
buy my
go.
book. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and how other people can benefit from not only being sober, but also how to help loved ones and help themselves that are suffering from an addiction. So, God bless you for everything you do. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
of
for having me
course.
again.
Of course. And thank you to everybody who's listening. We'll see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.